Message? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I've been given the okay signal to start, so I will. We've only got 25 minutes together, so I'm going to try and not rush through, but move through at a good pace so that we hopefully have some time for questions at the end. So you're here at how I empowered my users with personalised skills-based training pathways. I hope that's what you're intending to be at. If not, I hope you find it useful anyway. I've probably got the longest title of any session and also almost the last one. So thank you for coming along and sticking it out with me. Just before we get started, obviously, I want to say a thank you to the sponsors of this event. It really has been a fantastic event. Really happy that it's been able to go ahead. And it's down to these guys here, so thank you to them. And I'm going to start just by telling you a bit about myself and the organisation that I work at. So I'm Lauren, and I'm working at the National Children's Bureau, or NCB. We're a children's charity. We're based in the UK. Our mission is to build a better childhood for every child. And we do this in lots of different ways. So we have lots of different teams working on quite different activities in the organisation, which makes it quite a complex and challenging environment for Salesforce. So we have an evidence, we use evidence to influence policy change. So we've got a research and policy team. We do lots of convening, bringing people together and making sure the right people are in the right room together to strengthen their influence. We deliver lots of training to what we call the children's workforce. So think teachers, members of staff at local authorities or councils, nurses, youth workers, etc. And we do lots to amplify children and young people's voices because we believe that anything to do with children's policy should be influenced by what they think. We've sort of a mid-sized charity. We've got around 110 staff across 3 sites, 2 in London and 1 in Belfast. And in terms of Salesforce, we've got a sort of a fairly checkered past. It's not an original story. It's a well-known story, sort of Salesforce introduced, not really given the kind of care and attention it needs, bumbled along for several years. And in 2019 into 2020, we underwent a significant redevelopment project and relaunch. That's where I came in to manage that. And I am the sort of one part-time admin who's responsible for Salesforce at NCB. So I'll set the scene. Where were we? So we'd undergone this redevelopment project. The purpose of the redevelopment project was to create a system that worked for all those different parts of the organization, but did so in quite a foundational way. So the aim was to strip it back to basics, looking at using out-of-the-box functionality, getting to grips with accounts, contacts, campaigns, and opportunities with very limited use of custom objects, just a few that we already had. And excuse me, I just looked at the chat, it distracted me. Got a compliment from Laura, thank you. So we have this new system. The aim was to go back to kind of foundation and then to build. So try to be really agile, basically, with the development, test out the basics of the system and then build on that. In terms of culture and kind of attitudes, we had quite a large number of staff feeling quite negative towards Salesforce and having very low confidence in their ability to use it and also in kind of the value it could add to the organization, having seen kind of successive attempts to introduce it and those attempts failing. And this was particularly true with the approach to training as well. People kept telling me the same kind of stories over and over again about the trainer who came in and started their session by saying, I don't know anything about Salesforce. The trainer who came in and chewed gum all the way through the training session and really got people's nerves on edge. So lots of negative feeling amongst staff towards Salesforce, which we've been sort of trying to turn around in lots of ways. Everybody overworked and under-resourced, like they always are in all charities. And you hear it all the time, but it's just a constant pressure. People say, I don't have time to learn something new. I don't have time to even think about whether or not I need to use this. And lots of different training needs between and within the team. So what the research and policy team need to know about using the system, very different to what the social care team need to know about it, very different to what the comms team need to know about it, etc. So how do I get from here to my goal, full user adoption and confidence, which I had on my sort of project outcomes? So the one thing I really knew at the beginning was that I didn't want to write a lengthy guide, a complete guide to Salesforce at NCB. I have done this in the past at other organizations, but in this case, I knew, number one, that I didn't want to write it. I didn't have the time to sit down and write it. I didn't want to keep it updated all the time, knowing that our system was definitely going to grow and change, possibly quite rapidly. I didn't want that to be an extra kind of burden to update. And I also didn't want to suffer knowing that I had to put all this time into writing a beautiful guide with pictures and clear explanations, and know that at the end of the day, nobody was going to read it. And probably everyone was just going to come and ask me questions anyway, and I'll say to them, it's in the guide, and we end up falling out. So I knew I didn't want to do that. But what I did want is I really wanted my staff to take responsibility for their own learning and minimize my input. This is partly for me, because part-time solo admin, I've got lots of different demands on my time. So partly for me, but also because I wanted staff to feel a connection with the system. So it wasn't something that was being done to them. And I wanted them to have a deep understanding of it and to be able to use it without following guidance. That means I think you have such a more natural engagement with the system. It doesn't feel like this arduous thing. Oh, I have to go and do this task. I'll get the guide out, got to find where my copy is. Oh, it's been updated, my copy's out of date, etc. I wanted to support staff's professional development by offering valuable skills. This is something I'm very passionate about, not only in this setting, but also in supporting my internal champions group. I think if no one had ever given me my first opportunity to work on Salesforce as an intern, then I would never be where I am now. So I'm very passionate about sharing that with others. I wanted to have a tailored, efficient solution that enabled staff to focus on just the things they need. So this is, again, thinking about everyone having different needs. I just wanted people to be able to choose what needed for their role and therefore know the training they were having was definitely relevant. One of the other horror stories that was told was sort of a one-day compulsory training for the entire organization, and people switched off. People felt like the afternoon was not relevant to them. People went off to go to a meeting because they didn't need to go to that bit, and that had not gone well. And I wanted a flexible solution that will grow as the system does. Again, trying to be very agile in the planning of this. So I had a 5-point plan, and this is my 5-point plan. I'm going to go through it, but it can also be your 5-point plan, thinking about what you might want to take away from today's session. If you are kind of sitting there thinking, what could I do to deliver training to my users? Or if you're at the beginning of an implementation, or you ever are again in the future, this could be your plan. So step 1 is identify Salesforce tasks. So the number one thing I was asked all the time is, what do I use Salesforce for? This is probably true in lots of different places as well, but certainly at NCB, we've got lots of different digital systems. We have one for our finance that you need to log in and do your credit card return. We have one for your HR that you need to log in and book your holiday. We have systems all over the place that you want to log in for our IT support, all these different systems, different passwords. And people need a little bit of help kind of navigating those different systems and understanding what they're all for. They're all just names and icons at the end of the day. So I identified, I went through kind of all our planning and sort of structuring notes and said, okay, these are 10 things that you should be using Salesforce for, I call them 10 key tasks. You can see them on the screen. They might be a little bit small, but effectively it's sort of account management. It's grouping of people into groups. We use sort of campaigns for that. Recording what we do, sending emails, tracking funding bids, processing income. So we use Salesforce to raise invoices. Managing our associates. So we use external kind of freelancers to deliver lots of our training, using reports, using dashboards, and sharing feedback and issues via cases. So I came up with these 10 key tasks, and interesting to note, these kind of are central to everything I do with communicating with my users. It's not only about training, it's also about adoption. So this is how I ask teams to sort of rate themselves on how well they have adopted Salesforce. Each task has a 2-minute video, demonstrates how it works in Salesforce, and these are the first thing that any new member of staff does when they join the organization, and also the first thing that anyone does before undertaking any training. So they really understand before starting what Salesforce is for and how it links to their job. I then broke each task down into skills. So what would you need to be able to do to deliver that task? So again, the example is a little bit small, but say the task is managing stakeholder data. In order to do that, you need to be able to create and update accounts. You need to be able to log calls and meetings and tasks. You need to be able to use hierarchies. You need to be able to send an email. And I split these up as well into kind of skill level, so that it was easy to understand who needs them. Expert level is really just relevant to a few staff, core relevant to everybody, and advanced relevant depending on the role. I then set up a way for users to evaluate their skills. I just did this using a really simple form assembly form. I absolutely love form assembly, like shout out to them. I use them all the time. And so it asks them things like, okay, managing stakeholder data, you said this was part of your role on the first page. Do you have this skill, yes or no? And when it comes down to the advanced and expert skill, also giving them an option to say, no, I don't need that. So they can just ignore that one and not worry about it. But once they submit this form, they get emailed a copy of their response, and what they basically have is a nice gap analysis of what they need to learn. Then to prepare the training that corresponds to the task and skills, so it's very clear. So in each of the courses that I ran, and bear in mind I was delivering, we went from a position 95% of the organization needs training, so we had an initial kind of push on training, whereas now we're looking at more continuous training. But in the first stage, we delivered I think I delivered about 30 courses and used my champions to help deliver them. But very easy to see that if you were attending Core 1, Introduction to Accessing Salesforce, these are the skills and task areas it's going to cover. So you can quickly compare from your evaluation to what the course covers and see exactly which courses you need to attend. And just out of interest to you, the courses I ran were 2 hours long. We did 1 hour presentation and 1 hour hands-on activities in the sandbox. And that worked really, really well, even though after about 2 courses, we had to move all our delivery online because of coronavirus. That kind of hands-on activity portion of the training was very, very popular and really helped people, I think, embed what they just covered in the presentation part. And finally, embed and sustain. As I said, one of the things that people had complained about was that they kind of attended training and then forgotten it, and then by the time they came around to actually need to use the skill, they had forgotten what they'd learned. So making training content continuously available was really important for that. So the recordings of the courses are all available, and of course the practical tasks that form part of the workshop section are also available for people to revisit. But we really want to develop this now that the main bulk of sort of initial training is over into e-learning courses. I can see a couple of people talking about my Trailhead in the chat, and I really would like to use my Trailhead for this function. I'm not sure yet if that is what I'm going to use, but I just think it looks like a great tool, and I enthusiastic user of Trailhead myself, so I think that would be great. I would say my users, and maybe some of your users share this, really would struggle to access training that isn't directly linked to our organization. So that kind of, if I said to someone, go off and do a Trailhead on running a report, I think they would find that much less accessible than something that had been produced by us, that had our examples in it, real life examples that they recognize. That seems to be a very important way to engage my users. And other ways of kind of embedding this process is to make it part of the HR induction process, so new starters, and also at kind of regular evaluation points in the year, so annual appraisals and things like that. That Salesforce training is a part of that, so it isn't all just about me banging on about it all the time and sending emails, but it's really a part of the culture, and that we periodically encourage staff to reevaluate what they need. Their job may have changed and they may need a new skill now that they didn't before. They may have learned something but forgotten it and don't feel confident in it anymore. So they need to revisit the training, perhaps. I just wanted to say, because I want to be real in this presentation. I'm talking about what I did. I'm not talking about what necessarily is the perfect way of doing anything. I have not escaped guides in total. So we do have some processes, such as raising invoices, that they do need to do the right thing every time, and it needs to be perfect. So at the moment, we have some short guides that cover these. I really try and keep them very much sort of create the account, then create the opportunity, rather than how to do those things, because I consider those things skills that should be covered in training. But yes, not quite escape the guides, and people do ask for them all the time. I'm very keen to investigate some kind of inline training options for Salesforce, so like during the process, being able to access kind of guidance. So watch this space. I guess there's a lot more to cover here, and I think staff training is a really, really interesting and important area. And I have left hopefully 5 minutes for questions. Time went much faster than I expected. So I don't know. I think we've probably got some helpful moderator to summarize some of the questions, but I might just scroll back through and have a look at the chat as well. I see, Mark, you said, do I ever evaluate users' responses? And interestingly, no, I made it clear to people when completing the evaluation that I'm not checking up on them. And I really wanted people to be able to evaluate themselves without worrying that I'm then going to pounce on them and be like, oh, you don't know enough, you're rubbish. Because a lot of time users say to me, perhaps because Salesforce has been around for so long, that they feel so guilty that they don't get it. They're like, I know you've told us, I know I've done the training, I know it's been 6 months and I should know by now, but I just don't. And honestly, as often as I get criticism, I get apologies from people. And I really want to kind of take that guilt away from people, because I mean, I don't want people to feel guilty. It's a waste of time. And I think this kind of fostering a learning culture is really important. But I am very keen to, I think I'm saying a bit too much of this, I'm really keen to get that data into Salesforce and to look at it on a kind of a zoomed out level. So I'm not looking at individual responses, but to get an understand of trends, and maybe compare that with what I'm seeing in terms of maybe lots of things are being done wrong, but people say they're really competent in that. Why is that happening? Let's see. Oh, Megan says, is it enforced by leadership? Is it an organizational expectation that staff will invest time in self-learning? That seems to be the biggest hurdle. That is a hurdle that I would say I'm straddled right now. I've got one leg over on one side and one leg on the back, to get leadership to do this, because honestly, the leaders in our organization were the most difficult people to get to training. I initially really wanted them to come to training with everybody, because I was like, that's such a great you know, that's such a great demonstration of support for Salesforce. But they ultimately requested that they have their own training session. So now they understand it a bit more. They are coming around a bit more to enforcing it. I mentioned appraisals. So one of the things we are kind of negotiating at the moment is have in our annual appraisal cycle, having each leader at each level, you know, check it against, I will give them the data of what's been covered, and they will say whether it has or not. So yeah, it is a hurdle. I completely agree with you there. Let's see. Is there any questions? I don't know, Bhavna, if you have combined the questions. I maybe can't see them. I just missed them. Oh, someone said they do a Slack. James George says we do a Slack Salesforce office hour once a week, do a Q&A and give tips. That's a good idea. I really miss, I'm sure we all really miss being in the office and being able to look over people's shoulders and just help them. And again, I'm really trying to emphasize to everyone that they can contact me. We use Teams, or maybe use Slack or other, contact me anytime. Maybe I'll regret this one day, but I just, I think people hold back now. I don't want to bother you. Please bother me. It's my job. One of the things I've been looking at, just out of interest to anyone, is using a something like LearnTrack, or there's a few others like internal e-learning for Salesforce tools. Been looking at using those, as well as looking at my Trailhead. Jonathan says, can we see a copy of your survey? I mean, yes. Can you contact me? Contact me on LinkedIn and give me your email address, and I will send it over to you. Rebecca says, I'd rather help now than have to clean data later. So true, so true. Particularly true when we work with invoices, and the finance team get really annoyed when those go wrong. So definitely rather get in there and be preventative. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you found it helpful. That's really nice to hear. Sometimes I worry I'm more interested in the user side of things, how people engage with Salesforce, than the technical side of things. I think both equally important, have to find time for both. Oh, Shannon's got some interesting insights there on research into how people learn, especially adult learners. I think that's really interesting. I have a background in education. I think it would be wrong to say that, to just take everything you think you know about how children learn and apply it to adults. Adults much less obedient in learning than children, I think. They tend to just walk out the room because they've got a phone call. Okay. I think all the presentations will be shared. I believe that is the intention. So you'll see the screenshots as well if you access that later. But you know, I am on LinkedIn if anyone would like to receive any more sort of detailed information about what I did. Again, I'd say it's just what I did. I can't say that it's perfect. I think it's worked for us, and you might need to tweak it to work with your users. Oh, thanks. Oh, Nadine has asked a question. Can I go on and ask a question? I hope this is fine. I know there was a lot of things about it's going to start and finish on time. But Nadine says, my organization uses 430 apps. I have a hard time keeping up with the basic functionality of these. How do you address this? How do I address this? I mean, this is a problem for us as well. We have integrations with various tools. We have integrations with MailChimp, Eventbrite, Shopify, and I am kind of de facto responsible for those things, even though I'm not really responsible for those things. And so I do not cover the training for those things. But it is that is a problem. We are very fortunate to be looking at further investment into wider digital and integrating Salesforce with that and creating sort of a new digital team with Salesforce at its heart. And so I probably will look to apply similar kind of methodology to those. Think about how do people need to use it, what are their tasks, what skills do they need to those tasks, and then write training that speaks to those skills. I think it's quite a pick it up and take it wherever you need to take it kind of approach. And really for me the key is breaking stuff down and being really modular so that people can tailor it and pick and mix. Paula says, what tool did you use for your screen capture videos? I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, I've literally just used PowerPoint. They are very rough and ready. Lauren gives you a tour of what this part of Salesforce is used for, or what this scenario looks like. So I just use the PowerPoint tool. And then I host them. We use Office 365 sort of environment. I host them on Stream, and then they're accessible on an intranet and such like. I've recently set up an intranet, the SharePoint site, beautiful site, just for Salesforce, which has just revolutionized my life, because suddenly I have more than a single page to organize all the things. The training is all there, laid out. It's really easy to navigate. It's just much better than a list of links, which is what we had up until recently. Lots of recommendations for different screencast recordings. That's something you're doing a lot of. I have to say, it's a really tricky thing to do, because I did it, sent them around to everyone, and I was like, oh God, everyone's just gonna, this is when we were still in the office, everyone's gonna start watching them and I'm gonna hear my voice in stereo coming out from 100 computer screens. There's nothing worse than the sound of your own voice.
Right, just asking if there are any more questions. Otherwise, I think we're getting very close to close. Are you? Yeah. I was just checking. So
yeah,
I could have done the introduction, but we had some horrible network issues just at the top of the hour. Anyway, thank you ever so much, Lauren. I'm sure that a lot of people will be able to relate to the issues of training in profit. And it's lovely hearing some of the innovative solutions that you did to untangle that horrible mess and turn it into something ordered and wonderful. Now, I believe that after this session, we've got a networking Nook room hosted by Bill Florio for folks to continue discussing the topic of training Salesforce users at non-profits. But I hope that all of you will join with me in saying thank you so much, Lauren. That was a really clear and wonderful talk. And I hope a lot of people take up your offer to join with you on LinkedIn as well. So thank you very, very much.
Thank
virtual
you, John.
applause.
I might go over to that